Hi, this is Scott from SaaS Startup Stories, and today's show is sponsored by ActiveCampaign, the world's #1 email marketing and automation platform, and the system that I personally use to run my entire business. If you'd like to get started with ActiveCampaign and take advantage of the best current promo they're running, then go to scottdudley.com/AC and fill out the form. Today, my special guest is Nikola Mijic. Nick is based in San Francisco and is the CEO and co-founder at Matik, which is a platform that personalises data-driven content in minutes. It allows organisations to remove the data bottleneck and add personalised numbers, tables and charts directly into decks and PDFs. Nick, are you ready to rock and roll?
Yes, I am. Thanks for having me, Scott.
You're welcome. All right, so let's start off with your background and what initially got you interested in starting a SaaS company.
Yeah. Well, I guess kind of have to start way back. I'm originally from Sarajevo, Bosnia. So I was actually a refugee. I came to the US in 97 after the war broke out in Yugoslavia. We kind of went all over. Went to Hungary for about a year and a half, then went to Germany and wanted to stay in Germany. We were there for about 5 years and couldn't get citizenship. So we ended up applying all over and we ended up coming to the US. And basically, I've always been interested in starting a company. I think like the American dream is to do that. Prior to starting Matik, I was at LinkedIn, where I had worked in kind of a data role, program manager. We basically built out internal tools and narratives. And LinkedIn is a great company to work for, great benefits, great pay, but I've always did want to start something from the ground up. And, my why, partly my background, what my parents had to go through, and coming over here was prove to them like, hey, the sacrifice that you made is something I'm taking advantage of. And then two, I've always been really, really passionate about data and I've always supported sales and customer success and had built something internally or had the chance to rebuild an internal tool at LinkedIn that was really successful that automated the presentation building process for sales and customer success and thought, hey, I think there's a bigger opportunity. I think this is really what I think there could be a long-term business here. And I didn't want to have that regret later on in life when I was older thinking, hey, you know what? I wish I would have done something when I was younger. Right? I'm not saying that you can't do it when you're older, but it becomes a little more difficult, when you're a little bit older. So,
yeah, it makes sense. No worries. All right, so was Matik bootstrapped or did you get VC funding? Tell us how you got the business off the ground.
yeah. So we started the company, my co-founder, we started the company in January of 2019. So we worked out of my apartment. So it was bootstrapped for the first 6 months and kind of built like the initial prototype. Got a few actually companies just to test the product, and the feedback was really positive. And that led to some, venture capitalists hearing about us. They reached out and we ended up raising a seed round at the end of 2019. So we raised a $3 million seed round at the end of 2019. So we basically used that to finish building the product, building out a small team, getting that product market fit. And then that ultimately led to us raising a Series A with Andreessen Horowitz. Last year, we raised a 20 million Series A.
Excellent. Exciting stuff. So would you say there's anything you would change about your approach if you had to do it all over again? What lessons have you learned?
I don't know. I don't know if I felt like everything happened at the right timing. I think fundraising is one aspect of it, but I think we also had to deal with a lot of the stuff that was going on in the world over the past 3 years. So,
yeah, it's true.
When we raised the money at the end of 2019, right, we went into 2020, 3 months later, all of a sudden you had COVID happen and the market completely crashed for 2 months. And we're like, oh my gosh, do I need to be calling LinkedIn to get my job back? Right. Like it was one of the it was one of those type of moments where you just didn't know what would go. So I don't know if I would change anything necessarily. I think what I learned through the process is that you have to adapt and you kind of have to stay even keeled, right? There's going to be a lot of ups, there's going to be a lot of downs, and you have to be able to kind of stay even keeled throughout the entire process.
Okay, would you say possibly that sort of COVID period was good timing for you looking back at it possibly, or I mean, did it help?
I think I think so, because I think it causes people to really ruthlessly prioritize. I mean, at the time, we had a prototype. We had two customers that were basically using the product. We were still a very, very small team. I think we had, when COVID first, we had like 4 or 5 people total, including me, my co-founder.
Mm.
And I think at that point, you really have to ruthlessly prioritize on really driving value for your customers, right? And we were still at the stage where we were trying to get product market fit, right? So we were still iterating quite a bit. We were
Yeah.
making frequent changes to the product. So I think in that sense, it was great because it really caused us to focus on what matters, right? You didn't have a choice. You had to really double down on the things that would get you to the next milestone.
Yeah, it makes sense. So that's sort of a good segue into the next question. How did you get your first 10 customers?
Yeah, so I don't come from a sales background. My background is product and analytics, and you know, being in a B2B SaaS company, right? We're direct selling. We don't have necessarily a product-led motion. The first customer actually was I met at a dinner party prior to COVID. So my wife and I, being in San Francisco, we went to a dinner party with some friends and got to meet some new folks there. And they asked, "Hey, what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I just, started a company. Here's kind of what we're trying to focus on, the problem that we're trying to solve." And the woman that I was talking to, she was an SDR manager at Envoy, which was our first a company that signed with us. And so,
Okay.
the story was, she was like, "Hey, I think this could be something our customer success team, they do a lot of, externally facing quarterly business reviews, renewal decks, and we have templates in PowerPoint or Google, but it just takes forever to go and get the data and populate it. And it'd be awesome if there was like a one-click button that pulled all the data and spit out a Google slide deck." So,
Mm.
I didn't know at that point, like, do I follow up with her? Do I not follow? Like, how does this work? So I ended up following up with her at the next day and like, "Hey, if you're still willing to make that intro, would love to chat with the CS team at Envoy." And sure enough, she sent an intro. And back then we were doing in-person meetings. So I actually walked over to their office and gave them a little bit of an overview of the prototype and what we're trying to solve for, and it really, really resonated. So they were willing to give it a go and test it, and then they ended up becoming customers. So that was kind of the first one. And then from there, it was really just grind, right?
Mm.
You are reaching out to folks in your network. I had our ICP is customer success. So um, I worked at a startup prior to LinkedIn that was in customer success. So I had a pretty big network and really treated it as if I was a salesperson and reached out to my network to get feedback on the product and get feedback on what we were doing. And that's kind of what led to, customer two, customer three, customer four. And then we started getting a little bit of traction. We had our first case study. And then, from there, it just started picking up.
Okay, interesting. So yeah, if we switch gears a little bit now, let's talk about the Matic product and what sets it apart from the competition.
Yeah. So, I mean, just I guess to reiterate, like at a high level, what we do is we automate that presentation building process. So we automate data-driven presentations. The output is a Google slide deck, PowerPoint deck, or a PDF. And so our whole premise is we allow you to connect to all these different data sources and create a template that then end user, in this case, a customer success manager, an account executives, an account manager, can use to go and generate a very personalized presentation that has data that's specific to their customer or their meeting that they have that's upcoming. And so what we've done really well is this ability to give something to the end user that's a little bit more self-serve, where it's very easy. They have access to all the templates that their admin has given them access to. They can select the template, give Matic some inputs, like who the presentation is for, the date range for the data, and then we'll go ahead and pull all the data on their behalf and spit out a totally native presentation. But I would say what sets us apart also is on the admin side. We've made a UI that allows somebody to go and easily onboard a template. So connect to the different data sources and then automate that entire process so that the end user can get benefit.
Okay, interesting. So I'm not sure if this question's relevant, but what are your thoughts on combining the traditional silos of analytics and statistics with marketing and PR to create effective data storytelling? So two completely different sort of topics and merge them in together.
Yes, I actually think it is pretty relevant because if you look at our main customers, right, these large B2B tech companies, whether it's Asana, whether it's Glassdoor, at the end of the day, these narratives that their sales and customer success teams are using with prospects and customers are usually very, very heavily influenced by marketing, right? Marketing, product marketing in particular, will have, hey, here's how I want you guys to talk about our value props. Here's how I want you to talk about ROI, right? And so there's hopefully a cohesive story between the pre-sale motion when you're pitching a prospect to post-sale when they become a customer and you're trying to show value.
Mm.
And so we believe that they are an essential part in making sure that everything is cohesive, right, throughout the customer journey. And I think that is something that if I look at customers that do extremely really well, they do a really great job of infusing what product marketing is doing into their narrative that they're sharing with their prospects and customers.
Yeah, highly effective. Absolutely. So, what strategies would you recommend to make better use of data to build trust with customers?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you always want to be able to tie the data to the objectives of your customers, right? So if someone
Yeah.
purchased a product or service, they have an objective of why they purchased your product or service. And you want to make sure that when you do show adoption or usage or anything along those lines, that you're tying that to the overall objective of why they purchased your product, right? And that you're hopefully helping them move the needle. And I think that's one of the biggest things that you can do to build that trust is to always reiterate and make sure that nothing has changed in terms of why they purchased your product. And then hopefully you are building a story over time across the
Mm.
different touch points in the journey that kind of build on top of one another that helps show indicate why your product or service has helped them achieve their objective, right?
Yes, it's important. It's all tied into that end objective, isn't it? You begin with the end in mind.
Totally,
Yeah, yeah, agree.
totally.
All right, so I'm just curious, sort of when you say that Matic can generate data-driven content, does this mean it sort of creates just an outline of sorts which the user then expands on, or does it create the full-blown presentation?
It's the latter. So usually our customers have some sort of template that they've created, right, in
Yeah.
PowerPoint or Google. So let's say I'm a customer success manager at a big tech company and I manage 50 accounts, right? There's a renewal deck that says, hey, here's a renewal template that you can use with your customers upon renewal. And there's placeholders that will say, hey, Scott, go to the CRM to get this data point, go to Tableau to get this chart,
I
go to
see.
Nick to get this data, right? And what we've done is we take that template that you already have and
Yeah.
we help you automate the process so that the rep is not having to go to all those different places where with a click of a button, we'll go to all the different data sources for you, pull the data, personalize it, and then spit out a totally editable presentation that's in PowerPoint or Google Slides, right? So we're not trying to box in the user. They have the ability to go and make changes when we generate the
Yeah.
deck. But the hope is we get you 90% of the way there, right?
Yeah, well, you provide the most important stuff or the hardest stuff to get, and then they just finish it off, basically.
Totally, totally.
Yeah. All right. So, how are you using email marketing to convert trials to customers and to retain existing customers?
Yeah, so right now our motion is definitely more direct selling. So we are like more, I would say, enterprise, B2B enterprise. We just are now starting to kind of figure out like a free trial motion in which we are going to be utilizing a lot more email marketing. It's also something that I think it could be a direction for our product as well as how do we, an email is just another form of a narrative at the end of the day, right? Like
Yeah.
just like a document, a PowerPoint or a Google slide deck, that's a narrative. An email is a narrative. You're just using a bunch of different data points and hopefully telling a story via the email. And so it's definitely something I think we will continue to work on moving forward, especially as we start catering more to smaller companies and we have potentially a product-led motion.
So, would that include cold email outreach?
Yeah, I mean, we do like because we are, we use SalesLog, for example. That's in our tech stack that our sales team uses. So we do have
Yeah.
outbound emails that our sales teams, both SDRs and account executives, are doing today. to
Yeah.
reach our ICP and potential prospects.
Yeah. Okay. And how do you approach reducing churn and turning your customers into raving fans?
Yeah, I mean, we use our own product, right? So at the end of the day, we want to be able to show
Excellent.
value. We want to show value. So, we want to be able to showcase, hey, what you've done, what you've implemented in Matic, and
Yeah.
how the usage and adoption translates to what you were trying to accomplish. So, if it's productivity, right, at the end of the day, it's like, hey, it's taking, prior to Matic, it was taking our reps 2 hours to create a QBR. Well, we should be able to show you, hey, here's how many presentations you generated via Matic, and here's the time savings associated with that, right? If your big objective was account coverage, hey, I want to do more of these ROI one pagers, I want to do more of these QBRs, but because it takes so long to take today, we're only doing it with 50% of our customers. Well, the hope is if you're automating the process, can we get from 50 to 100%? And so, we use that data and we'll create our own templates within Matic to showcase how the usage data has helped them accomplish those objectives.
Yeah, I've seen sort of examples of that with Grammarly and a few other products as well, where they sort of send you emails pretty regularly showing you how much time you've saved. And,
Totally.
and it does make a difference to reinforce how useful the product is. So that's an excellent strategy. Yeah. All right. So what's the single biggest challenge that you believe new founders are experiencing right now with growing SaaS companies?
I don't know if this is probably something that's not necessarily related to business, but it's more so just the climate that we're in, right? And the challenges that you're having to face as a founder, right? So it's not just about the product, but your employees now are affected by a lot of things that are outside of just work, right? The war in Ukraine, the stuff that's going on with the supply chain. There's just a lot of things going on. And I think that was one of the things that I didn't take into consideration. When I first thought of starting a company, I didn't think, oh, I'd have to be able to navigate, how to communicate that with my employees around social injustice or, all those things that are going on. How do I build out a remote team, right? Because my entire work life experience has always been in person and in an office. Well, now, you're building a culture and you're building a company all remotely, right? And
Yeah.
so, how do you build that culture? How do you build that ethos? I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that I see, and it's something that even when Zach and I started the company, was definitely a curveball for us because, like I said, we'd always been in person, we'd always been in the office, and so how do you replicate? How do you build a culture where you don't have that face-to-face contact, right? It's over a Zoom or it's over a Google Hangout.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies have sort of experienced that over the last few years, and they've been forced into it. The old remote workforce now, it's a lot more common than it was 2 or 3 years ago. So I think that's an excellent point you've made.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm not convinced that I think bigger companies who are more established, who have a culture established, it makes sense for them to go fully remote, right? They've got HR teams, they've got teams that are dedicated to solving this problem, like the Googles, the Facebooks, right? The Microsofts. But think about a company where you're 15, 20 employees, right? The reason why you do a startup or the reason why you I convinced you, Scott, to leave your cushy job at Salesforce or LinkedIn to come join us is that camaraderie that you're building, right? But that's very hard to build over Zoom, right? So if we close our first, 7-figure deal or you have a big release, you want to be able to celebrate, but it's very tough. Okay, guys, let's jump on a call, on a Zoom call, and you've got all these boxes. Only one person can talk at a time, right? So I think that's the challenging part: is how do you build that culture? How do you do that when people are so distributed, right? I think all offsites are something that are becoming more and more common. Where okay, we can be remote, but let's invest in bringing people together and having it be very, very intentional to drive those relationships and to drive that culture.
Yeah, I notice a lot of companies are using the hybrid approach where like part of it's remote
Totally.
and the other part of it's in the office. I guess that way you get a bit of the best of both worlds.
Totally.
But I mean, then the other
Yeah, I
challenge
100%
is,
agree. I think
oh, sorry, go, sorry. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think that I totally agree. I think we're never going to go back 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. I think I think the norm has changed, right? There has to be some sort of hybrid mentality, but at the same time, I do think for smaller companies that are starting out, the face-to-face interaction or having that, I think helps build those relationships and helps build that culture. So I think there will have to probably invest in whether it is more frequent offsites where teams are gathering together in a certain location, right? I think that's probably going to be something that teams will, if they're very heavily distributed, meaning like, or hubs, right? Like, hey, we've got 5 folks in New York, we've got 5 folks in San Francisco.
Yeah,
Let's, do a WeWork in those areas so they can build out those relationships in those regions.
yeah, makes sense. All right, and then my favorite question: what's your favorite business book?
Oh, that's a tough one.
It is. I agree. Yeah.
Actually, actually, I saw it might not be like a business book per se, but I really like Carnegie's book on how to win and influence others. I feel like that the psychological aspect of how you deal with people is so prevalent
Yeah.
in startups, whether you're talking to an investor, employee, right, a customer. A book that I really, really like that I recently read was I'm a big soccer fan, so Carlo Ancelotti, which is one of the top coaches
Oh,
in the
yeah.
world, he's very quiet. So he wrote a book on quiet leadership. So he's not the type of person that screams or yells. He's not very charismatic. He's very, very quiet. And that was really interesting to see how you can lead by being a little bit more intentional and not necessarily cracking the whip. So highly recommend that one for folks that are maybe more introverts than they are extroverts.
Interesting. Yeah, I know him. He's the current manager of Real Madrid, isn't he? Or have they sacked him already?
Correct.
He is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Okay.
no, he's there. They won Champions League last year, so I doubt they're going to get rid of him anytime soon. But yeah, he's won it. I mean, he's been in all 5 Super Leagues. He's been in Italy, right? England. He's been in Spain, and he's won in every single league. So he's really, really well respected, and has coached some of the biggest biggest players, biggest egos, on the planet. I think a lot of people have respect with the way he leads and how he runs his teams.
Yeah, agree. He's fantastic. All right. So, what are you curious about or researching right now regarding SaaS and software?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is always right now with economic climate, people are always trying to figure out what's above the line and what's below the line, right? And so how we continue to show value is imperative. I think that's where kind of our product fits in quite a bit within the marketplace. I think another thing that's really, really top of mind, I think the way that pricing and packaging is done for SaaS, it used to be the user model. Now it's starting to maybe go a little bit more consumption with platform fees. And so that's always something that's top of mind is what is that next wave of pricing and packaging that SaaS is going to undertake. It seems like there's a little bit of a transition going on right now where people are moving away from those traditional models over to some sort of a hybrid, whether it's like consumption plus a platform. So
Yeah.
something very interesting that we've been looking at as well.
Excellent. Okay, and then just to wrap up, where can people go to find out more about Matik?
Yeah, so go to our website, Matic, or matic.io. Also, we're on all the socials to check out LinkedIn as well. But primarily, if you just go to our website, we've got a lot of great content, case studies on how people are using our product, as well as the different use cases that you could be using Matic for.
Probably worth mentioning too that it's Matik with a K, isn't it?
Correct, matik.io. So the name was around automatic, but both my co-founder and I spell my name with N-I-K, and my co-founder is Zach, Z-A-K. So we were like, why don't we shorten it up and just do Matic and with a K, and that's how we got the name. So
Okay. Excellent. All right. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Nick. I appreciate it.
awesome. Thanks for having me, Scott.